Welcome to Flipping 50. This is Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to the Flipping 50 show where I address your top questions and struggles. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to think to get the energy and vitality you want in this second and better half. And today with me really is the book by my nightstand and the fabulous author. As many of you know, I'm on a journey, blogging about my hormones and exercise right now. And as I'm recording this, it's days before Ironman Cozumel. And I'm just a little panicked and a little nervous, and appropriately so, at the right spot at the right time. But on my nightstand for the last few weeks is Older, Faster, Stronger, the book by Margaret Webb. And Margaret is here with me today, and none of us is more thrilled than me. Margaret is an avid runner, volunteer running coach for underprivileged kids, a screenwriter, author, and journalist. Her features have been published in magazines and newspapers such as Sports Illustrated Women and the Globe and Mail. This is her second nonfiction book. She lives in Toronto, where she teaches magazine writing at Ryerson University. Margaret, I am so happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be talking to you. And wow, Ironman Cozumel, good luck with that.
Yeah, pray if you're inclined. Yeah.
You'll do great.
So, opening up, just to give listeners who are not familiar with this book, and everybody listening, I hope you run out and get this. So this was about, in 2014, this was the year you were 50, you were writing about. And something made you pivot and decide, I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to be the subject, and here's how this is going to roll. So I'm going to test myself and what can happen in a year. Whatever was it that made you say, okay, I'm doing this and I'm writing about it?
I think I was kind of struggling with that midlife depression thing, It's 15 years and, I'd been I'd say a recreational runner, not very serious about it. And with my first book, I ate my way across Canada. And I kind of put on a few pounds, and some old habits crept back into my life. And there was writing. Basically, there was writing I wanted to do. So what do? I run a marathon. But I was looking at 50, and I go, wait, I've got way too much life to live. I've got too many dreams that I have. And I don't want to be thinking of myself as on this sort of downward slope, like 50 is some kind of peak, and then it's downhill from there. I wanted to hit 50 and have it be like, boom, we're still climbing to the top of the mountain and chasing dreams and achieving dreams. And I just felt that this suddenly, like this marathon idea burst into my head, and I'd never been on my bucket list before. In fact, I told my runner friends I'd never run a marathon, but it just sprang into my head, and I just kind of thought, well, I think I need to go with this. I think that there's something I need to learn from running a marathon that I can apply to life, that I can apply to my writing career. And that's kind of why I went after it.
I'm curious because as you were talking, I have commented on this before about the fact that many writers run. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure it's that, or is it that many runners write? Which is it?
Well, how many angels on the head of a pen? I can't answer that question, but I know that I do have a number of writer friends who do run. I also have a number of running friends who are extremely interested in writing. If they don't, they may like to blog about writing, or they might like to share race posts, but they're always intensely interested in reading. I think a running audience is a great reading audience. I think runners are smart, so of course they're going to be readers. But for me as a writer, it's a very sedentary lifestyle if you're just sitting in your computer writing and researching all day. Mm-hmm. And so you need to physically move your body in order to stay healthy, in order to make your brain function better. And it's just, and I think that when you go out for a long run, it just gets the creative juices flowing. It frees you up from wherever you might be stuck in your head. Mm-hmm. For anybody at any kind of work. I just think it's a very mentally freeing thing. I always come back from a run. I'll say this: when I start writing in the morning, if I've gone for a run first, I'm going to have a better writing day. If it's a non-running day, my writing day is going to suffer. So even if I don't go for a run, I usually go for a walk before I start to write. The day goes much better.
I love that. And I love the fact that you've said, it frees up your thoughts. It's really an analogy, right? Frees up the spaces in your mind, but it frees up your body, right? You move better, it goes together. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had this analogy that I shared with one of my writing professors when I was doing a master's in English and creative writing a few decades ago. I said, because at the time I was writing poetry, and I was saying that, I think that writing poetry is kind of like being a sprinter, right? You've got these short, hard bursts, and that kind of creativity and that kind of running burst is very similar. Writing plays and screenplays is more like being a middle distance runner. And being a novelist or being a nonfiction writer writing book-length projects is more akin to the marathon or the half marathon. And I think that there's something about developing the patience and the discipline and the rigor in training for a marathon that actually helps you develop that same kind of discipline, rigor, and patience for writing a long form piece of work, because it takes a lot of self-belief, a lot of patience, and a lot of just sitting down and doing it to write a book. And same with a marathon. You don't just go out and run a marathon. You think of it today, tomorrow I'm going to run one. You need to put in a year or two of training before you can attempt that.
So a couple of things I want to tackle. So this is, I'm putting this on you to not let me forget. The second thing I want to get to is, in talking about your marathon, you didn't just run a marathon, but you got faster. So I want to come back to that. Mm-hmm. But to a listener who might be distracted right now about the fact that, well, I can't run because it bothers my knees. I can't run, that's not my thing. I do want to address that. And it's toward the end of the book. You actually talk about that myth that running is so hard on your knees. Mm-hmm. And the reality, I'll let you spill that out. What's the reality about runners and knees and research about whether there's truth to that or not?
Well, listen, when I started, I've always been kind of a walker and maybe a shuffling runner. Since I discovered arch supports in my late 20s, I'd sort of go out and maybe do a 15-minute run or whatever. And I was kind of afraid of running too much because I bought into the myth that it's going to hurt my knees. And I'm terribly flat-footed. I can't stand without arch support. So when I started running, I was just I was afraid it would hurt me. It would hurt my back. A lot of people in my family have back issues. What I have found is completely the opposite for myself, is that running has strengthened every part of my body. And in fact, my feet, before I started to run, I could stand for maybe 10 minutes on my flat feet. Running has even strengthened my feet so that now that I can run greater distances, I can stand, I can walk bare feet in a way I never could before. My knees, not a single knee problem in all my years of running. My back is strong. I had some studies done during my super fit year that showed that I have actually not only better bone mass compared to women my own age, but my bone mass is actually akin to women in sort of a 20 to 34-year-old age group. Now, okay, you could argue that I was born with like awesome bone mass, but my sister was developing osteoporosis, and she started training for an Ironman, and then they kicked her out of her osteoporosis study. So, running is good for building bone mass. And there have been numerous studies done that runners will suffer fewer knee issues than non-runners. Why is that? Well, if running is going to strengthen your muscles, it's going to strengthen every part of your body, including your bones, your ligaments, all that stuff. And as well as runners, anybody who's staying physically active is going to probably be carrying less weight. What's worse on your knees? It's carrying extra weight. When I see women my age, or men my age especially, who are carrying extra weight, they're always complaining about knee problems. Yeah. You say, I couldn't run because of my knee problems. I'm saying, well, wait a minute. It's your weight that's probably causing the knee problems.
Yeah. And to to attest to your bone density. So that's fantastic. And that's based on running, but also, and tell me when you began that. So I know in the book, you began strength training. Had you ever strength trained before that? I know you were a collegiate athlete.
Yeah.
So maybe early, but what was your weightlifting experience?
Well, I really had done no weightlifting before in my life. I played hockey when I was in university. I played on the varsity team. I played baseball as a kid. I mean, I grew up on a farm, so I was probably, given most women my age, probably physically stronger. But I'm a small woman. I'm 5 feet tall. I range in weight depending on whether I'm in training or not between 113 and 122. So I'm not a very big woman, but I'm pretty strong for my size. But the weight training made me so strong, and I loved it. I mean, I didn't love it when I started. I mean, going to the gym and lifting weights, it's just kind of, compared to going for a run outdoors, it seems kind of boring. And I had to struggle with that. But then I began to crave the routine of it, and I especially crave, and I would suggest to anybody to do this, is keep a notebook on your weight training, because when you start, you'll go, oh my God, I'm lifting peanuts. But within 2 weeks, you will see your weight training, your strength increase so fast. They're saying, like, in about 12 weeks of weight training, you can increase your strength by 2 to 3 times. That's phenomenal. You'll probably notice a bigger difference lifting weights in 12 weeks than you might in 12 weeks of running, in terms of what you're able to do. So I really credit weight training with making me a faster runner. Overall physically stronger. And I love, if all you do is run, you can actually become physically frail. Your upper body can become frail because you're not using it.
Yeah.
Your legs become conditioned to running and doing the same old thing. So they can become, might be fast for running, but go climb some stairs and you might be fatigued, in your legs, not your lungs. But lifting weights, it's just like you just feel like dynamite. You feel overall strong and powerful, right? And there's that feeling of power that translates into your running, that translates into your life. You feel confident. You feel like you can take on life and take control over things. And of course, it's extremely important for older women to work on their strength training. So in fact, I would recommend anybody, if all you're going to do is run, you're not really going to be overall fit. If you can work some strength training in there and do the kind of strength training that makes you happy. If you don't like lifting weights, swim, cycle, do the kind of weightlifting, yoga. Yoga is fantastic weight training as well. You're lifting your body, you're working your overall body. Do what you love and you will continue to do it.
Perfect quote. Do what you love and you will continue to do it.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, so talk to me. I know you've been busy doing a little something different this past year. So are you still training? Are you still weightlifting? I've got just a little background noise, Margaret.
There's no background noise on my end. If it might be a little bit of static feedback or something. Is that okay? Is it good now?
Yep, I think we're good.
Yeah, so I will run for as long as I possibly can run. So I'm hoping, my goal is to run until the day I die, and hopefully that's well into my 90s or even 100. I don't know. I come from a family of long-lived women, so I run almost every day, but I don't run as much distance as I was when I was training for a marathon or half marathon. In fact, I haven't really been in a training mode in these last 2 years because I've been, my partner and I moved out of the city and we designed and built our own dream house, and we were very involved in the construction of that. And in this past year, we sort of had a bit of a traumatic event happen in the sense that we got hit with a terrible flood. And so we've been fighting floodwaters from a lake that swelled 3 or 4 feet. And so we probably filled about 1,000 sandbags and emptied about 1,000 sandbags. And we manned pumps, or I should say woman pumps, around the clock for months on end. And now we're into the construction of actually lifting our house and building up our property. And we could not have fought to defend our house in the way that we did if we didn't both have this base of fitness. So I feel very thankful for that, and excited that we were able to take that on.
Okay, so let's talk, because I lost my train of thought here. Let's go back. So not only did you do this marathon, but you did get faster.
Yeah, quite a bit faster too. It was a bit shocking. Because I was never, there's nobody in my running club that was ever going to say, "Oh, look at her, look how fast she runs." I was pretty, I never made any track teams when I was a kid, and even in public school, I always get cut from the track teams because I was so slow. I think my speed actually came from, two things. In my club, I started to go into the speed training night. I wouldn't just run long distances. I would actually show up to do the interval training and hill training. So we did that, and I started adding a second week of that into my training program. But the thing that made I really credit my strength, was lifting weights, because I was able to build up my hamstrings and my glutes. I got my core strength really strong. But building up my glutes helped me become a more balanced runner and helped me to become more of a forefront runner. I was always usually really a bad hill striker. And, I had these two powerful muscles in my glutes that were powering me forward. And that increased my speed in an incredible amount.
Awesome. Great combination. So let's talk about what happened as far as, aging backwards. So in the book, and this is like shameless plug from me to you about all of you listeners about the book and all that it says to back up what exercise does to, and it's not anti-aging. I don't think you or I believe we're going to get out of this one alive, but we can certainly do it better than maybe we've had given to us as models before. I think we are the generation who's going to raise the roof. Yeah. And so let's talk about that. So we can talk about different levels. And I think what appeals to me are three things: the brain, the cognitive function, the memory, and then mitochondria. To everybody out there, that's, if you're getting out of breath when you go upstairs, I mean, that's one level of it. We used to think, science took for granted that was a part of the aging process that was natural. Truth be told, we can reverse it with exercise. We can make a 70-year-old man or woman actually the equivalent of a 20-year-old with the right exercise training. And then the third piece is telomeres. So those markers that shorten or can lengthen or are longer, and they're basically a benchmark for what's your longevity right now. So which one of those you want to dive into and talk about?
Oh my God. I could talk about all of them.
Okay. Which first?
Well, the telomeres, which, if you go to your family doctor and talk about your telomeres, they're probably not going to know what the heck you're talking about. It's fairly recent research. But the cutting edge research has basically associated the length of your telomeres with the length of your lifespan. There's a strong correlation. And what happens is when your cell divides, through the aging process, or actually just through the living process, cells, they're born, they do their function, they die. And then what you want is for new cells to be born, right? But every time those cells divide, your telomeres can shorten, and, the ends become, exposed and frayed, and that's when inflammatory diseases like cancer can creep in. But exercise is the dose of medicine you give to every single part of your body, including the telomeres. And somebody who exercises, is fit, will tend to have longer telomeres because, your cells dividing. It's not just fraying and shortening, but you're releasing, all sorts of, healthy, beneficial, chemicals that are actually causing the telomeres to continue to grow, right? And so the longer telomeres, the longer your life. That's what they're saying. Now, I went to a luncheon where there are lots of people my age and older hearing this world expert talk about telomeres, and they were all waiting for the drug breakthrough. Right? When can we take a drug to lengthen our telomeres? And I'm looking around the table, and these are people who are predominantly overweight. They have knee and back problems. They're not very physically fit. They're not really all that happy, right? In their bodies. They're not really that
Right.
happy in their lives. And I'm thinking, why do you want to live a really long time in this decrepit body? And I was talking to this one woman. I even had that conversation.
Just for curiosity's sake, did you ask that question?
I did too. I did talk to this woman, and I said, you could hire a personal trainer. You're a wealthy person who's coming to this luncheon, who's paying like a couple $100 to hear this expert speak. And you want a drug to live a long time, but the drug may lengthen your telomeres, but it's not going to make you fit, right? It's not going to make your knee problems go away. It's not going to make you happy. Physical fitness is the answer for all of that. Mitochondria, another, cellular function. I was talking to a marathoner who's also a world famous metabolic what's his? Oh my God, what is he? Mark Tarnopolosky. He's a neurometabolic researcher, right?
That is a 50-cent word, girlfriend.
Oh my God, that's like exactly. Anyway, he looks at basically impact of exercise and nutrition at the cellular level, and he does a lot of work on mitochondria. And he injected mice with deficient mitochondria that they're basically would cause that mice to age rapidly. And then what he did is he took those mice that he injected with this, faulty mitochondria, and had one study of mice that just continued on. They just lived their lives, and they aged rapidly, and they, got fat and corpulent, and they lost their hair, and they became impotent, and they died within a few months. He took another group of mice that he had still injected with this faulty mitochondria, and he put them on an exercise program, basically running a couple of times a week on a treadmill that would stimulate the exercise that you might do as a runner. And these mice were able to reverse the faulty mitochondria they've been injected in. And they were, and compared to the other mice, they were fit, they were healthy, they were actually able to overcome the faulty mitochondria. So, it just goes to show you that like exercise is basically the drug you take to stall aging, to turn back the clock on aging.
I love that. If I get asked one more time from a subscriber or a casual, maybe stop by the Facebook page, I'll get an email that will say, I am 70 and XYZ. Is it too late?
No, it's not too late.
Absolutely not.
No, I have all these studies. My book is very, it's kind of got a blend of personal memoir, my running journey. It's got a bit of my family memoir, my, stories about my mom and my sister, my Ironman sister, and my mom. Anyway, there's also a blend of research, and then there's also a strand of narrative that looks at my running adventures that I took with a lot of older women. Mm-hmm. And some of these older women did not start exercising or training seriously until well into their 50s and 60s, and they became Iron women or Iron men.
Right.
They became
Sister Madonna Booter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They became Sister Madonna. She didn't start training until she was in her 50s, and she's still running Ironman. And she's into her late 80s now.
80s, yeah.
BJ McHugh, she really didn't take up running until she was 50, and she's still running marathons with her grandchildren. I think she's probably close to 90 now.
Yeah.
So there's these remarkable stories of women who and they've done studies, on women in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who take up weight training, and they are able to increase their physical strength, akin to what a younger person would be able to do. So no matter where you start, you can improve.
Yes.
It's never too late. In fact, just start is the message.
It's an exciting time. And then, so knowing today, dementia, Alzheimer's, I mean, they're concerns that we all have. Knowing women tend to outlive men, the risk for women, and maybe because of our monkey minds, our, multitasking minds, the chatter that we have, we are more susceptible to depression, anxiety, and maybe therefore dementia and Alzheimer's. But there's a lot to be said about exercise and its insurance against those as well.
Well, it's kind of interesting because we've had these very gendered roles up until the last few years. And we probably is still predominant to have gendered roles where, men might have a more physically active work, or have more physical active chores around the home. So that physical activity, if women suffer more, dementia or depression or whatever, is that linked to, their biology of being a woman, or is it linked to the amount of physical activity they've been able to have over their lifetime? And so, we would really need to do some lifelong studies to track people from birth to death and track it as to amount of physical activity they have. But all the research points to the
really
fact.
Interesting concept. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, well, but because now they're concerned about men suffering from osteoporosis. Men who are not physically active, who become
the game evens up, right? At about 70, things start the playing field is leveled.
Men become frail old men if they're not staying physically active, right? So it's not just women who have osteoporosis, but again, the cure for osteoporosis, bone density, is exercise, and running is an excellent one. Like, I mean, you're doing a great thing by doing an Ironman because you've got strength training with your cycling and your swimming, but running is better for building bone density because it's the pounding. People say, "Oh, the pounding's not good on you." Well, in fact, it is. The pounding increases bone density, as does weight training, resistance training.
Right. But resistance training actually comes back to be the biggest bone density winner. So there's a minimal effective stress, though. I mean, you're 113. I'm not. So I weigh a little more than that. But, after we do a certain amount of, your body is used to that weight, and then you can't overcome that. You have hit your minimal effective stress. So more repetitions of the same weight doesn't necessarily give you more bone density. So the weight training and bringing yourself to fatigue with lower repetitions and high weight actually has a little bit more play in bone density. And like you said,
right.
If you're going to run, doing strength training for the upper body, super important, and, although, I can say Ironman, so you can say, oh, really fit. Well, Lance Armstrong had osteoporosis, because he was unweighted. He was super strong. Yeah. But, there was no impact at all. And because the amount of time he was spending on a bike, he wasn't doing a lot of strength training. He was riding uphill, yes, and that's resistance. But you have to look at, all the way around. What are your priorities? And probably all of us would say, well, I want to think well, have good memory. I want bone density. I need the muscles to be strong to do the things for bone density. So we really need a well-rounded plate, right?
Absolutely. Listen, if you're thinking about what you need to survive when you're in your 80s or 90s, if you want to live alone, you've got to be able to carry your groceries. So you need upper body strength, right?
That is so true. I used to say, it used to be, a red convertible was sexy, but at some point it's going to be who can carry the trays in the cafeteria. That's going to be sexy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree with you totally. I'm just saying that, like, you're right with Lance Armstrong. There's no resistance, or that pounding with cycling. You build incredible strength with cycling, but you don't get that pounding motion, which you do get with running like that.
Yeah.
But I also agree with you that you can't just run. You've got to do some weight bearing training.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that was huge when you talked about in the book, that was a pivotal point for you. And if I remember correctly, you were not firing your glutes.
Yes. Oh, I was started my year injured, because I ran my butt off.
There are a lot of women who would be like, I'm all over.
I was happy to run my butt off, but I wasn't happy to not have any glute muscles, So I got injured because there are very few runners that are physically gifted to be able to run as a balanced runner, right? Most of us, when we run a lot, we start to unbalance our muscles, and where weight training, resistance training comes in is to get those muscles back in balance. So what happens to me is I run with my quads, right? My quad pulls me through my running motion, and my hams and my glutes, they stop firing. They stopped working because my quads were doing all the work. And so, I got injured. So I did some, sports medicine therapy. And what did they say for, the cure for a sports injury is more exercise. So, then I was getting into doing squats and deadlifts and all that sort of thing to build up my hams and my glutes. And suddenly, and I do remember the day, and I write about it in my book, I remember the night where my glutes started firing in my running motion. And suddenly it was like I had these two turbochargers on my rear end, and they just kicked in, and it was like they sprang me forward. And I started to be able to run faster and also run as a more balanced runner, up on more on my forefront, because I had suddenly these glutes powering me and these stronger hamstrings. And it was a really exciting night. And I thought, wow, I did that. I built those muscles.
The Body by Margaret.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, okay. So love this. Everyone, I'm going to have a link to Older, Faster, Stronger in the show notes. Margaret, is there a place where people can connect more with you, or that you'd like to send them if they want more Margaret?
Well, I would like to say that I'm keeping my blog really active, although that's going to happen in the new year again. But you can check me out on Facebook, and you can check me out on my Facebook page, Older, Faster, Stronger. And you can visit my website at www.margaretwebb.com. Pretty easy. Just remember margaretwebb.com.
Got it.
And I'm going to start blogging a little bit more about my next running adventures.
Exciting. Okay. So we're going to look forward to that. Okay. So the hardest question, or conclusive question that I ask everybody at the end of the show is there a question that you wish I would have asked you?
Well, I do not so much, but I do want to talk a little bit about your upcoming race.
Oh,
and I want to give you some advice.
Maybe I don't. Do you know who's in charge here, right?
Yeah. I want to give you some, the Ironman Cozumel. That's a big, big race. It's not just big in your psychic space, but it is a long race, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a huge race to break down. And one of the things that I learned to do in my sort of motivational psychological training, because I was trying to be super fit, not just fast and strong, but mentally fit too, and learning how to break down a race. And I do have a chapter that talks about how to tackle race strategy, specifically as a woman identified runner. That our culture and training sometimes mitigates against being super competitive, and psychologically how to approach a race so that you stay confident through the race, stay focused through the race, and stay strong through the race. And that's not an easy thing to do. If you're doing a sprint, you only have to pay attention for 10, 15, 20 seconds, depending on your speed. But in a marathon, you could be out there for between 3 and 5 hours, right?
Right.
How do you stay mentally focused and strong and confident throughout that time frame? And for an Ironman, it's probably even a bigger challenge because you're out there for such a long time.
Yes.
So there's a chapter that I talk about.
Could you stop saying that, please?
Well, go back to the chapter and just read about how I suggest about breaking down the race into smaller segments.
Yeah. I do remember that. Yes.
Cool. And develop a superhero for each segment of that race who's going to be running by your side and cheering you on, right? You're going to create these images and these superheroes in your mind who are going to be, you're going to be able to conjure them up at every section of the race, and they're going to cheer you on, and that's going to help you stay focused, strong, and happy through a race.
And happy. Yeah. Yeah. I use gratitude a lot. And so in these last few days of prep, it's, I can get very emotional in these last training days because I think about the gratitude and the people who've gotten me to the point where I could sign up and get to the starting line. And that's a big part of it. But the superhero idea is really a good one. So it's a different kind of strength. There's, that heart and the tearful emotion of the whole thing is what I was tapping into. But I'm visioning this image of strength as you talk about the superheroes. So thank you. I'm going to work on that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to call you next week if it doesn't work too, by the way.
We'll do a little psychological counseling session.
Yeah, we may just do that.
When you use imagery, right? When you conjure up powerful imagery that helps you through a race, that imagery has a tendency to almost take on a life of its own. So when I imagine, I like to use a lot of animal imagery. So when I imagine a dolphin streaking through the water, and then I get in touch with the grace of the dolphin and the breathing of the dolphin and the happiness of the dolphin. I start to get myself into that mindset of that animal imagery. And then suddenly I'll look beside me and I feel like, oh, there's Flicker swimming beside me on the road, right? It's like the imagery comes alive and it makes you so happy, and it gets you over feeling miserable sometimes in a race when the going gets hard. So to conjure up really powerful imagery, and I've had my superheroes, which tend to be the female women runners. I've had them suddenly appear on the side of the road in a bleacher. All of these women cheering me on in a race. It's like, they're not real. They're my imagery, but oh my God, does it become real? I mean, it's maybe it's a little bit like endorphins are like taking drugs or something. I don't know, but useful in a race.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Margaret, thank you. Not only was this last half an hour or so a gift, and thrilled to talk to you and thrilled to introduce you to our community, because you so speak the language of aging better and hope and the power we have to change and decide what is our GPS. But these last couple of minutes were selfishly also very valuable. Thank you. I think you've just changed my week.
Well, I wish you all the best in your race. You'll have a great time and have a happy result when you have a great time. Time doesn't matter so much, right? It's about being happy. It's about being positive. Yeah. So enjoy the race above all.
Thanks so much. I intend to get my money's worth.
Cool.
Listener,
great.
If you have a question for Margaret, don't worry. I will put all of the juicy links to reach her, ask more questions, and find out a little bit more specifically about that book in the show notes at flipping50.com/podcast. But if you have a question, leave it below the show link there at flipping50.com. I love hearing from you. I'm sure Margaret will appreciate a question as well. And if this episode was helpful, please leave a rating in iTunes. It really helps. And then share this with a friend. Surround yourself with a supportive community of women who are on the same journey. What are you waiting for? Let's start Flipping 50 together.